Hello, students of Mr. Boland, and welcome to a very exciting Photoshop tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make polar panoramic images. Polar panoramic images are these little tiny planets that look like they're floating, or sometimes, they have a background that looks like this. And what a polar panoramic image is, it's a distorted view of a panoramic image. And panoramic images, as some of you may have heard, are images that are sometimes created by the kind of stitching together, putting together a lot of different images. And that's what this one is. So if you take a look at this, this was a combination of probably 20 different pictures where I was standing right here in the middle and I took pictures. My camera was on a tripod and I took pictures all the way around me so that I had 360 degrees of coverage. So I photographed every single thing that I could see and I stitched it together into this image. The kind of hallmark of a panoramic image is that the aspect ratio of the image is 1:2, and an aspect ratio just measures how long the short side is in comparison to the long side. So for panoramic images, the longest side is twice as long as the short side. So you can crop a photo to look like a panoramic image and create these polar panoramics. And that's what I did here. This is a library, and this is just one image that I cropped so that I could make a polar panoramic. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So to get started, I took this photo in my office of some Legos on a stool. And one of the most important things to keep in mind when you're creating a polar panoramic image is that you want the left and the right side of the photo to be pretty much the same. Because if they're the same, when you stitch them together, they're going to come together really nicely, just like these images. So the reason that they worked so well was because the left side and the right side came together so that you couldn't even see where the image, where one side started and the other side ended. So that's why I left this little bit of gray wall so that it's pretty close. The lighting is slightly different, but it's pretty close. So I think this will work. So the first thing we want to do, and again, I took this on my phone, I just opened it in Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to crop this to that aspect ratio that I was talking about. So if you go over to your crop tool, which is located over here on the for most of you, I think it's going to be on the left, but in your toolbar. And I kind of cheated because I had already had this aspect ratio in here. But if you come up here where it says ratio, or in this drop down, if you don't see it, you can go to ratio and you're going to put 2:1. So this is saying that your longest side is twice as long as your shortest side. And now you can click in here and you can adjust where you want the photo to crop. So you might want it down here so you get more of the stool, or maybe you want it up here so you get more of this background. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right below that stool. All right, so now I have cropped my image so that it has an aspect ratio that is the same as a panoramic. So now I am going to squish this into a square because, as you saw before, the panoramic photos are all kind of little circles inside of a square. So I'm going to make this into a square by going to Image, Image Size, and then I'm going to copy my width and paste it into my height. So this little aspect ratio constrainer device that looks like a little lock right here, if that's clicked, you won't be able to copy and paste like that because what it's doing is preserving that aspect ratio you determined earlier. So what you want to do is make sure that that is unclicked and then copy the width into the height. So what you've done is you have made this into a very weird looking square. Now we're going to turn it upside down by going to Image, Image Rotation 180 degrees. And now we're going to turn it into a planet. So go up to Filter, Distort, Polar Coordinates. And you can get a preview, but it doesn't look very good. So if you click on this little tiny minus sign right down here, you can zoom out so you can start to see what this is going to look like. And what you want to make sure is checked is down here you have an option to do rectangular to polar, which is what you have. You essentially have a rectangular image and you want to make it a polar image. Because if you come down here to polar to rectangular, it does something very bizarre. So click rectangular to polar and click OK. And now you have your little planet. So you can leave it like this if you want to. You could turn it to the right side up by going back up to image rotation, 180 degrees. And you could leave it just like this. That's like the image that I showed you before. Whoops, right here. So you could leave it just like that where it's got a little bit of a background, or if you wanted to make something that looks like this without the background, I'll show you how to do that quickly. So if you want to get rid of your background, you're going to need to open your layers window. And for the newer versions of Photoshop, you can do that right here on the right-hand side. If you can't find it or you're not sure where to go, if you go up to Window, Layers, it'll bring up that window as well. So the first thing we're going to do here is double click, and it's going to ask you to rename the layer. You don't need to do that. All you're doing is you're removing this from its background. And you're going to go to your marquee tool, and if you hold down the corner, you can pick what design you want. If you want a rectangular selection or an elliptical. And I'm going to hold down Shift while I create a circle. I just drag it. And that's going to give me a nice circle. And I'm going to put this where I want my image to be. And I don't actually like that. I want that to be bigger. So I'm going to unselect and make a bigger circle and place that right about there. And then I'm going to go back. I just want to adjust this a little bit. I'm going to go back to my layers window. And down here at the bottom, you've got some different options of things you can do with your layers. And all we're going to do is create a layer mask. And what this does is it doesn't necessarily delete the outside portion, but it gets rid of it from your view. So if you add your layer mask, it goes away and you're left with your little planet. And then if you want to transform it or, put it in a different direction, you can do that with your image rotation tool. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. I think these are really fun to make. And the most important thing to remember when you're taking or selecting an image is that you want to create or you want to pick something that has those left and right sides that are pretty much the same so that they go together. Now you can see here just a little bit where the lighting was slightly different. So you could try to clean that up if you know how to do that in Photoshop, or you could just leave it. But the closer you get, like down here, you can barely even see that those are two separate images. So the closer the left and the right sides are to matching, the less you'll have that kind of seam in the middle there. But you can play with, however you want to crop it. So remember at the beginning when we cropped right underneath that stool, you could change it so that you crop in a different place and the image is going to look different. So again, I encourage you to have a lot of fun with this and good luck.